Welcome back to my Reinvention series. I'm Nancy Spurlock, and this week I took a little trip to San Clemente to sit down with Maria Brophy, author of Art, Money, Success, and other powerful books that have inspired so many creatives. We talked about her journey, her creative life, and her newest book, COVID, A Love Story. Let's dive in. Hey everybody, I'm Nancy Spurlock here with Maria Brophy at Brophy Art Studio, and this is for my series Reinventing Yourself because I am with the master, the goddess of reinvention, and we're here to talk about her new book, which I won't show you yet. She will show you. So tell me a little bit about, would you like to go into the first book you wrote and how you reinvented yourself? Give a little backstory on your history.
Sure. So, and as you know, you read my first book, which is called Art, Money, Success. So what led me into writing that book was that I was in the insurance industry for, I hate to say it, 15 years. And I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. It was a good job. I appreciate it. But it wasn't until I met a guy named Drew Brophy, this surfer dude that I fell in love with, and he was painting surfboards for a living. And I thought that was really cool, and I got really interested in what he was doing. And so I would go to work during the day in the insurance company, and then on the weekends I would help him with his art. Like I would help him with marketing and sales. And then I'll shorten the story a little bit, but we fell in love, we got married, and then he convinced me to quit my job. And so that was when
Reinvent yourself.
That was when I reinvented myself. Huge, because I went from being a person that worked in the corporate world with a steady paycheck.
Yes.
And lots of sick pay, paid time off, health benefits. I went from that to making zero and figuring out how to make an income for myself in the art business and having no benefits and having, just literally starting over. But I literally, even though it was a hard decision to make, it's like once I made the decision and I did it, I never regretted it.
That's awesome.
Never, even though the first couple of years were really, really hard. Really hard. My accountant even told me, Maria, you're going to have to go get a job. You guys aren't making enough money. And I remember going, I just quit my job. I am not getting a job. I'm making a new job. I'm creating a new way of making money. And
you're an inventor.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
You reinvented yourself, but to think that, not to follow someone else's path.
Yeah.
So you weren't just like doing that. You created a whole new way of living.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So tell us, so the first book is that
Art,
one, right?
Money, Success.
Yes.
This book was born out of I'm trying to think of the number of years. So when I started working with Drew, I guess it was about 10 years. And so it took us 10 years to really understand how we went from zero to doing really well in art. It took us 10 years to develop everything we were doing. And that sounds like a long time, but that really, realistically, when I think about it, it was a long process because we had a baby. We had a lot of things that slowed us down also. But I had a lot of artists coming to me asking me for advice.
Mm-hmm.
And I discovered that I loved helping people figure things out. So they were saying, Maria, how did you get Drew's art on these products? Or how did you end up working with this company? Or how did you get this mural painting job? Or, they just wanted to know how we were doing everything. And so I would spend a lot of time with people helping them. And then it got to a point where so many people were coming for advice. I was like, okay, this is like a full-time job helping people.
Yeah.
And I'm not getting paid for it. I can't.
And that natural path just opened up for you.
So I started writing a blog, and then I started coaching artists just very part-time because, mind you, I'm running our art business and I've got a child to raise who, by the way, we homeschooled him part of the time. So I started writing a blog. And after quite a few years of writing a blog and coaching other artists, I really started to hone in on the formula that we used
It's interesting.
to find financial and lifestyle success
That's
with
important
art.
balance. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and what I mean by that for people who are listening is, yeah, Drew and I do work hard. We did work hard, but we also played hard. So every year for the last 25 years, we take a minimum of like 2 to 3 months travel each year.
And you go to some major places.
Yeah, we go all over the world.
So your financial success was there enough to be able to take that kind of time off. That's incredible.
Well, and a lot of times we work while we go, so we'll figure out ways to make work. So just a couple weeks ago, we love to surf Waco Surf Park in Texas,
Okay.
and we spend a lot of money there. It's very expensive, believe it or not, to go to a surf park to get waves. Anyway, look into it; you'll see what I mean. And so I came up with this idea. I was like, well, we go to Waco a lot. Why don't we develop a relationship with people who work there? And we already knew some people who work there, but why don't we find a way that we can do an event there where we're being of value to them, and we're teaching. So what we did was we did a surf and paint with Drew event, and it was amazing because A, we got paid to do it. B, we got to surf many times in the pool. C, we got paid to do it, and we didn't have to pay to do it.
So this is great.
But that's one example of, like, we've been doing things like that for 25 years. So we wanted to go to New Zealand and one year when our son was little, and we decided to rent a camper van and live out of it for a month in New Zealand. While we were there, we lined up some work things we could do that involved art, and we ended up getting two of our biggest clients by accident.
Oh,
entirely
wow.
by accident. We were there.
Yes.
And so that's kind of how we've lived our lives for the past 25 years.
I love it. I love the natural transitions because when I've started, I think I've done 11 episodes at this point. I talk about how, like, I started on canvas, and then my friend needed help painting a mural. Well, she had gotten paid, but she was under a time crunch and she had no money left. But I just went and learned, and just by me showing up and learning, when I went home, or that night we went to the party for that mural that we did. It was a big event with a big beer sponsorship. I met someone and he was like, hey, we need a muralist for a hotel in Iowa. And then you just keep walking through the doors that open.
You know what's interesting about that? So I work with so many artists. A good number of them never want to leave their house. They think that they can get very successful behind their computer.
Yeah.
And I tell them, you have to get out. You got to get your butt out of your house, and you have to meet people, because that's where all the opportunities are.
Yeah.
You are not going to get the big deals with people by hiding in your house. It's not going to happen.
Well, that's a great transition, because when I had cancer and I became an artist, my friend loaned me this book.
Yeah.
And then later I bought it on Kindle. And then when I moved to Vegas, I found out where you lived, and I found out about your gallery being here. And I'd already seen you on Instagram, followed you. And I was like, on my birthday, I'm going to meet my friend, but she's going to be my friend. She doesn't know it yet. She didn't know it yet. And I came and I got this book.
Friends now.
And then now it's not only do I have the book, I've got it autographed. And I'm like, now we're here doing this. So it's like you build those relationships, because I drove from Vegas to do this, to meet you.
I can't believe
And it was
you
years
drove
in the
here from Vegas, which, how long of a drive is that?
4 hours. And you kept saying
4
that the
hours.
whole time. But really, I had come from St. Louis to Vegas to that.
Yeah.
You know, the journey, the journey, you don't know the destination always. You just got to take the steps.
Yeah.
And you have a great way of lining out the steps in this book. So what, after this book, you went to this?
Well, this book came out 2 years ago, Empowered Women's Circle. But in between this book and this book, I've actually written 6 other books. And not all of them are available. A couple of them are on Amazon, There's a couple that I've taken off because I want to update them. So one is titled "How to Make Money um, Painting Live at Events."
Okay.
So it specifically teaches artists how to make money doing live events and like contracts and how to negotiate and how much money you can make. You can
That's
make a lot of
important.
money doing it. So we've done events. Heck, a couple years ago, a company flew us out to Barbados and we got paid like
What?
20 grand plus first class plane tickets because I asked for it.
Wow. I thought when I got the
I asked
king
for
suite at the
first
hotel, I was
class,
good. Good for
first
you.
class plane tickets because Drew was recovering and he still wasn't 100%. And I told them, I said, the only way he can travel that far is if he flies first class. And they said, okay. And then they put us up in this luxury hotel. And now, granted, most of our live events are not like that. This one stands out, but it's an example of what's possible.
Yeah.
It's an example of what. So that's one of the books I wrote. That's one of the books that I'm revising because since COVID, like a lot of things changed in that industry. Another book I wrote is called How to Understand Art Licensing Contracts.
Yeah.
And I'm revising that one. And then another one's called Living the Dream. And that was actually my very first book. And I wrote it when my son was 6 years old. And so I'm revising that to bring it up to date. But it's all about how to live the life that you dream of.
Yeah.
Whatever that is.
I love it. And the way I met you, you held an event here, and it was a smaller event, and it was a women's circle. But it wasn't called that. What was it?
It was called, I think it was a women's full moon circle.
Yeah, because we were on the beach.
Yeah.
We weren't even here yet.
Yeah.
And then I started coming monthly after that.
Yeah.
Or we were above the beach.
Yeah, we were at a park.
Yeah.
Overlooking the ocean.
Yeah, it was magnificent.
Yeah. So that was a magical night.
And the women I went there with, I bought them this book as a gift.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
oh,
I ordered it and got it.
I hope they like it.
Yeah, they did. So, so then this came about after that. I did not realize you had written all those books.
Yeah, I know a lot of people don't know that, and
you're a bestseller on Amazon.
This book this is my only book that's been a bestseller so far. My next book's going to be the big bestseller, but this one's been on the Amazon bestseller list about a dozen times.
That's awesome.
Since 2017, and I don't know. I didn't really know what to expect with this book. I get thank you messages from artists literally almost every day. I had one artist tell me, and this is a woman from, I don't remember which country she was, an Asian country, and she and her family had moved to Canada, and her family is in her parents and her siblings, young woman. She said she read my book, and because of what she learned, it enabled her to make consistently $10,000 a month, and she's supporting her entire family.
That's great.
And that was like the best thing I've ever heard.
That's great.
And that made me so happy to do that.
Well, when I first went through, so I had, some people will know that I have and if you don't know, I have the video out about my life and how art was influential on that and what I went through. But when I lost my job and I was gifted that, I read it, and that's how I was able to do the things I did art-wise, financially.
Yeah.
And then I kind of have transitioned back into the corporate world, but I'm trying to get back. So reading, and going to be doing some, consulting with Maria. She's available. Are you still doing that, right? With others?
I still do consulting.
Okay.
I put a lot of focus into my mastermind group. I have an online mastermind group.
Right.
And that's changing lives. That's a whole other story. But one interesting thing about this book, and I tell people this all the time, in the first couple chapters are the most important. Like chapter 2, decide what you want.
Yes. That's
the most important thing. And then I have these worksheets for you to fill out.
Mm-hmm.
I tell people, revisit the book at least once a year, and you will find that you've grown.
Yes.
That you might have checked off everything on this list that you wanted, or a lot of the things came true. And then you expand upon what you want, because if we're not expanding, we're shrinking,
Right.
right? And that's all life is. It's like constant expansion. Soon as we stop expanding our minds, our desires, what we want out of life, that's when we start to shrink, and that's when we die.
Yeah. And I want you to know, so we were listening on Audible on the way here, and with what my daughter does with her Etsy shop, she's applying what you're saying
Oh, good.
to that. She's, we were discussing how to apply that.
Yeah.
So where can someone get this book now?
Amazon.com. Or there's also, you can also find it on other online booksellers. You can just search it, Art, Money, Success, and my name, Maria Brophy, and you'll find it in a lot of different online stores.
Okay.
I think Barnes and Noble.
And you're on Instagram, and then
you can find me on Instagram.
The links to your mastermind classes, everything
is on my Instagram. Okay. Yeah. And my website, mariabrophy.com. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks for letting me plug that.
Yeah, no, well,
plug.
This is a life changer. And that's where I thought, because now a lot of people ask me, gosh, you've just constantly reinvented yourself. And I'm like, yeah, so I'm going to start doing a series about that.
Good.
And that's why I was like, the first person I want on that, other than me telling the little daily advice or whatever, is you. Because you were instrumental, this book, your book. And then you became, later, now we're friends. It's like, I see the future. But I know to get to the future, you have to focus on your daily tasks.
Yeah.
And then you can always look back at your sheet and see where you've been. And then you make a new path of where you're going.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, and right now I think it's more important than ever, because a lot of people are going through major changes right now. People are leaving marriages, they're leaving jobs, they're leaving their state, they're leaving their
country.
I mean, there's a lot of movement, there's a lot of reinvention. And I think a lot of people are afraid. I mean, change is scary. I've actually never been afraid of change.
I haven't either.
I don't know why that is. Did you have a rough upbringing? Because I think it's because my parents were bad parents.
See, I had a house full of people all the time. My parents were always doing construction on the house. And so my father would always have the neighbors come over, and there was just people always there, different people. I got to watch the process. And that's why probably I became a technical writer. And then my mother was a beautician, had a beauty shop in the backyard. So I always saw process. But with you, I think fear is a huge motivator. Yeah. The cancer, when I got cancer and became an artist, that was really where I kind of woke up, because I think my background was so cushy. I probably wouldn't have done a lot of reinvention, really, if it hadn't been for some serious stuff like that happening. Yeah. So tell us about your background.
Oh, well, I just had a really violent household that I grew up in. There was a lot of violence. There was a lot of uncertainty every day. I mean, it was just horrible. And as a kid, I just couldn't wait to get out of it. And everybody responds to a childhood like that differently. Some people become drug addicts and alcoholics, and some people, everybody responds differently. For me, I remember being 7 years old and looking around at all the chaos in the house and going, I am not going to be like these people.
Oh, wow.
And I started making an escape plan, and I graduated at the age of 18 from high school, literally moved out of the house 2 weeks later and never went back.
Good for you. Does that give you strength?
It did. You know what? I don't wish my childhood had been any different. I mean, I did when I was younger, but now that I have the wisdom I have, it gave me a lot of gifts. And one was the gift of thinking for myself, because nobody was telling me what to do. Yeah. And that's a really important thing. Nobody did the thinking for me. When I grew up, it was like nobody gave a crap. That really worked in my favor, because I have a very strong mind. Wow. And it comes in handy when things get rough. And if you were one of those fortunate people that grew up with great parents who gave you a lot of love and did make decisions for you and stuff, you can still learn to have a strong mind. You just have to really practice it. You have to practice it. Confidence is practice, you're not born with it.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. That absolutely is true.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about how you transitioned and how your brain, you became stronger and you can overcome adversity, that kind of leads into what you went through and what we're one of the reasons we're here to talk
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us about your new book that's coming out?
Yeah. My new book is called Don't Laugh. It's a weird title, but it's called COVID: A Love Story. It's funny how the title came about because I didn't name it. A doctor did, but that's a whole nother story. Um, but I was one of the unfortunate people, actually, I guess I was one of the unfortunate people that had to look through a hospital window and say goodbye to my husband right before they put him in a coma and on a ventilator due to COVID.
How old was he when that happened?
He was 50, and he was very young, 50, and he was a high level athlete,
Yeah.
big wave surfer, like big wave surfing, just strong as an ice, strongest man I ever personally met.
And your lungs, the capacity had to have been immense to be able to paddle out and surf those
Yeah,
kind of
and
waves.
surfing Mavericks and surfing Puerto Escondido and Pipeline and like all the big wave surf spots. Like that was his whole life.
Yeah.
And his dream was to be surfing big waves until he's 75. Because he has a friend who's 75 who surfs big waves still. And, anyway, so about 5 days after he was put on the ventilator and in the coma, the doctors asked me to pull life support.
Wow.
And they handed me a piece of paper and wanted me to sign it to let them pull life support and let him die because he was suffering. And I said no, but the day before that,
That's a strong woman to have to say no to that.
well,
So,
what's interesting is, so the day before, I was planning his funeral because we were told he was going to die. It was looking bad. His lung had just collapsed. There were so many things. They were surprised he was still hanging on. Do you know, within the first 4 days of being put on a ventilator, 85% of the COVID patients die. 85% in the first 4 days. So on day 4, I was planning his funeral, and I was thinking, okay, where should we do? And I'm thinking who I'm going to have speak at the funeral. I'm literally going through a checklist. And then all of a sudden, there was a voice. Literally, I heard words in my ear that said, if you want him to live, you have to plan for him to come home.
wow.
And I thought, whoa. And I am one that listens to intuition. I listen to messages that come from places we don't know where they're coming from. And I listened. And all of a sudden, I felt this like strength. And I said to myself, oh, I've got to not plan his funeral. Forget that. I'm going to plan for him to come home. And I'm going to have faith. And I'm going to have unwavering faith. And no matter what bad news they tell me every day, I'm not going to waver. I'm not going to give up until after he takes his last breath. So I'm giving myself this talk. And then I told my sister-in-law, I just made a decision. I'm going to have unwavering faith that he's going to come home. I said, but I don't even know what faith is. Like, I'm not a religious person. I don't know how to have faith. And so she helped me out with that. And she told me a story that she saw in a movie. It was a true story of a little boy who drowned, and his mother ran into the hospital, and like the whole town was there crying over the death of this little boy. And the mother runs in and she looks at everybody crying and she says, don't you grieve him. He's not dead. And she ran into the room where the little boy's lifeless body was. And she prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed and kept telling her boy, wake up, wake up, wake up. And he came back to life.
Wow.
And it was so phenomenal. It was so miraculous. They made a movie out of it. But when she told me that, I knew what I needed to do.
Yeah.
I said, oh, not only do I have to believe, even if he's dead, like the little boy's laying there dead, right? And she still said, no, you're not dead.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have to believe in the impossible, but I also have to not let anyone else think of him as dead. And I have to make everybody else believe. And so I became so hyper focused on bringing him back to life that it turned into a battle with the hospital, literal battle for months. But I got my way on a lot of things. I battled for alternative treatments that so going back to when they asked me to sign the paper to pull life support, it was the day after I decided to have unwavering faith. And the doctors can be very persuading because because they've got this patient, they know it could drag out and it's always going to end in death. So why drag it out? So the doctor looks me in the eye and he says, Mrs. Brophy, your husband is suffering and you can stop his suffering.
Wow.
Sign this. And so for a moment, it really got to me, like, because people can put things in your head. Oh my gosh, if I don't sign these papers, he's suffering and it's my fault. But then I remembered, oh no, I promised myself I'm not giving up until after he takes his last breath. And then I just looked at the doctor, and that gave me strength because I had made that decision the day before. And it gave me this strength. And I looked at the doctor and I said, I won't sign those papers. We're not pulling life support, and don't ever ask me again. And I was shocked at my own like confidence that came out, but he never asked again.
Good.
Never asked again. But I've heard from a lot of widows that, you know, they said yes because they were convinced that it was the right thing to do. And maybe it was. You never know. You'll never know. Like if I would have said okay and they pulled life support, I would have never known that he'd be alive today. Spoiler alert, he's alive.
He's alive and she's a warrior.
After 70 days on a ventilator.
Wow.
Which, by the way, they were telling me, like after 2 months, they said, look, he's not going to come home. He can't go home. He's on a ventilator. He's never coming off the ventilator. He'll come off after 60 days. Especially with all the things with him, his collapsed lung, sepsis. He had all these like deadly infections that you get from being on a ventilator, that you get in hospitals. They said, you have to choose the nursing home. We've got to get him out of this hospital. You have to choose the nursing home he's going to. And I'm like, nope, we're not sending him to a nursing home. Nope, that's not going to happen. So that was a whole nother battle. But
that you won.
That I won.
Warrior. That's the next book, by the way, eventually.
I know. There's like this book. I mean, I had to cut a lot out of this book, but this book talks about all the spiritual and supernatural things that happened.
Yeah.
By the way, this is just a mock-up.
Yeah. That's Drew's art.
The book's coming out soon. It's just a mock-up of the cover.
And that's his art, right?
He did the artwork for the cover. And he actually had me pose for a photograph. That is actually based on a real photograph he took of me here in the gallery because he wanted to get me. And then obviously that's him floating away. And I'm in a tug of war between with the other side who kept trying to take him. By the way, he did have a near-death experience. He did die briefly and came back. But I wouldn't let him go.
Everybody needs a Maria Brophy.
Oh, that's really sweet of you to say. I don't know. You know, people ask me where I got the strength to fight. I think part of it is that I'm so ADHD That, did you ever see the movie The Rain Man?
Yeah.
I was like the Rain Man on steroids. Like, remember how the Rain Man would say, "Gotta go to Kmart, gotta go to Kmart, gotta go," and he was just like so hyper focused.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I was the whole 5 months that Drew was in the hospital. Actually, about a little more than 4 months, and I was so hyper focused. All I did was take care of him, and like I was in the hospital almost every day, all day. I stopped going to work. I stopped eating. I stopped sleeping. And all I did was talk to doctors all day. Like, I talked to doctors outside of the hospital. I contacted doctors all over the country. I found out, I wanted to know what doctors are saving COVID patients.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a hold of a couple of them. And just looked for help. And one of the doctors is a surgeon out of Phoenix, Arizona. And she would talk to me a couple times a week. And she was a surgeon. She worked with COVID patients a lot. And she was kind of a friend. We met her in Egypt like years prior.
Wow.
And so she was helping me by talking, just let me bounce things off of her. Like, okay, I'm going to fight for this alternative treatment. What do you think of it as a doctor, as a surgeon? And I'd get her feedback, and I would talk to other doctors too. But she talked to me one night, and she said, and this when Drew was still in a coma, and she said, "Maria, in my meditation this morning, I had a vision that you were going to write a book about this." And I said, "Susan, I am not going to write a book about this." And she said, "I'm telling you, I saw it, and I even got the title of your book." And I said, "What's that?" And she said, "COVID, a love story." And I thought, that is the dumbest title ever. And then but I didn't tell her that because I was really flattered.
You're telling her now.
No, I did eventually tell her. But when I started writing the book, I didn't have a title. And so I used this as my working title, and it just grew on me. And I was like, you know what? It makes sense. Because the book is a love story, and it's not, I haven't even told you, see, it's too much to tell.
Well, people are going to read it.
Too much to
Where
tell.
will it be available when it
So
comes
this
to
is going to be on Amazon. It's going to be in all the online booksellers.
When's it the launch?
It is going to launch. I don't have a hard date, but I'm going to say July 1st.
Okay.
2025.
Okay.
Yeah.
So right after this comes out.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you go to my website, mariabrophy.com, and you click on the book tab, you can be put on the mailing list where you'll be notified when it comes out and when I'm going to tour the world, like, talking about this with my book. I
love it.
So if you want to be on my mailing list, yeah.
Yeah. You should.
Well, yeah.
Good for you. So at what point, so he was there 5 months, and now he's what, 55 years old?
So he's 54.
54, and he's come back and he's surfing the big waves again. And
he is surfing again.
What did the doctors say?
First they said he'd never come home.
Yeah.
Then they said he'd never get off the oxygen because he came home like an old man. He was fully paralyzed. He was paralyzed. He lost 100 pounds. That's what happens when they put you in an induced coma for a month.
Yeah.
And you lose all your muscle. I could do this to his leg.
Wow.
It was crazy. He was unrecognizable.
Yeah.
What
did the doctors say the day you left? Were there any apologies? Were there any high fives?
The doctors that actually worked on him in the hospital, one doctor out of many came to visit here.
Good.
And he looked at me and he said, "Maria, you saved his life."
Yeah.
I said, "Wow." And I was the biggest pain in the butt, and you're actually saying that? Like, I thought you, like, all the doctors, I was a pain in the butt.
You were his advocate.
Some of I had a whole medical team that didn't work at the hospitals that were helping me behind the scenes, like Dr. Sue. There's a Dr. Fitzgibbons, that's a virologist out of Santa Ana. He helped me a lot. he was helping a lot of COVID patients, and he was somebody that I heard was saving a lot of COVID patients. So I tracked him down. Actually, even though he has a full practice, that man would call me at 9 o'clock at night when after working 12-hour shifts. He would call me, didn't even know me, and he would coach me on things. And he would.
Wow.
I'm forever indebted to him. I had a Dr. Bob Sears, or is it the senior Sears? There's 4 Sears. The senior Sears that was helping me. He's written like 15 books.
Oh, wow.
And some of them are on nutrition. And so he coached me on how to get nutrition into Drew's feeding tube when he was at the 3rd hospital because he wasn't getting enough nutrition. And hospitals just don't do that. So I was bringing healthy smoothies for the nurses to feed in his feeding tube.
Wow.
But I was guided by Dr. Sears with those recipes. There was a couple other doctors that were helping me under the radar. They asked me not to.
Okay, I get it. Yeah.
Why? I don't know. I guess there's something about helping people. No, there's like a couple doctors that work at some major medical centers, and they for whatever reason, helping COVID patients outside of the norm was frowned upon. I don't know what it's like now, but
So how long has he been home now?
so it's been 3.5 years, and let's see, yeah, it's been about 3.5 years.
And he's got all his weight back, and he's surfing the big wave.
He's got all his weight back. He's so strong. And he's still working with like a personal trainer. He worked with physical trainers. He did physical training to learn how. He came home in a wheelchair.
Right.
Weighing 126 pounds.
Wow. And he's a tall, big dude. Or
He was a big dude. He weighed 220 when he went into the hospital.
wow.
So, but he's willed himself to get better. Yeah. And the biggest thing I want people to get out of this book, first of all, well, there's a couple things I want people to understand. One thing I want people to understand what 1.6 million families went through when their loved ones died. Because I don't think people get it, and those people are still so traumatized. It's amazing. I got through the trauma of it to write the book. Very traumatic.
Yes.
Going through that. Number 2, I want people to understand how important it is to advocate for yourself. The people who don't advocate for themselves or their loved ones are the ones that die.
Yeah.
Number 3, I want people to understand the love. And I haven't even mentioned this yet, but the reason we call this a love story is because the community and all the people that helped us and helped me, I couldn't have done it without their help. Yeah. Even though I was on the front line, I was the number 1 warrior. I had family members, I had friends, and I had strangers that helped us with money, that helped us with prayers, that helped us by dropping food off, that helped us by providing physical therapy. My friend Kim Fitzgerald does physical therapy. She was going in the hospital on her own dime. She's a single mom. Wow. Giving Drew physical therapy because that first hospital for 2 months didn't give him any.
Wow.
And he needed it because he was paralyzed. And she was going in there. And then I had a friend named Tan and his wife Ashley. They were going in and giving Drew therapy. I had a friend named Nikki. We had so many people help. We couldn't have done it without all these people.
All that love.
And I learned so much about how much love there is in the world, how giving people are. I learned how to receive that love because at first it was hard for me to let people do things for me. And I have so much compassion now for people who are going through strokes and cancer and all the things that people are dealing with right now. We have to be there for each other.
Yeah.
Because if we don't have a support system, it's really hard to advocate for yourself. It's really hard to go in the hospital and tell the doctor, okay, I know you have an education that I don't have, but I know this patient, and I know that because this is happening on his body, this means this. And while you have that medical degree in the white coat, I do know a thing or two about a thing or two. And I think that's the biggest mistake that we make is um, we put all our trust in a system that is kind of set up like McDonald's. It's a production line. And our bodies are not made exactly the same. What's good for you is not what's good for me.
Right.
We have different blood types and different hormone levels and different everything. You know, and so that that's something I really want people to get. Like if you have a loved one and you know they don't want to die and they've been given a death sentence,
Yes.
you don't have to accept it. Now, that's not to say they're not going to die. They might still die, but you don't have to accept it, and you can fight and you can look under rocks for answers outside of that hospital.
Yes.
And that's what I did.
Yes. You know, I did that when they couldn't find the lump I'd found on the mammogram, and the doctor came in the room and she said, I'm not seeing anything on my films. And I'd had 2 different kinds of ultrasounds, and I said, you take your hands out of your pockets and get over here and feel this thing. And then fear moved, but I said, I am paying your salary. It was just this strength because I had to be my own best advocate. I didn't have a Maria Brophy. I was it, you know? And she came over and felt it, and it turned out, she said to me, I'm so glad you had the surgery. Your tumor growth rate was 60%, 20's considered high. You would have been dead by Christmas. But I had to, I knew. So that inner voice, it's like it tells you to do the thing.
And how hard was that for you to say that? I mean, really, it's hard,
I
right?
was so vulnerable. I was laying there nude, my top was off. There were 2 technicians in the room. I was in the dark. All strangers. And that was the first time I'd ever seen that doctor. And I said to her, I mean, I was like, I did the finger and everything. I was like, do. And she huffy breathed me, pulled her hands, came over.
Huffy breath.
Yeah, she did. She went, ugh, rolled her eyes, came over and did it. And then when she felt it, she pulled her hands back, and I knew I was in trouble. The way she pulled her hands back so quickly. And she said, I'm going to schedule you with a surgeon immediately.
Wow.
So, but then
did she apologize?
A year later, I went in for my follow-up mammogram, and usually they come in the room and the doctor tells you you're fine.
Yeah.
She didn't come in the room. She sent a technician. I go, you go get that doctor. I want to talk to her. And she came in the room. She apologized. She told me I changed her life that day because I stood up for myself, and she realized that she wasn't just coming to work and thinking about what she was having for lunch, etc., and trusting that machine. So she started listening to her patients more.
I love it, because that is one of the things I wrote in the book, is that when I think about like why terrible things happen, and I felt like this was our path. Drew and I were meant to go on this horrific path. And I know why. Like, it took us 3.5 years to figure it out, but we have figured it out. It's to give people hope. It's to show people how to have strength, how to have a will to live, how to advocate, and all these things that we learn just by doing. But it's also not just about, it's not just about that. It's about the doctors. I believe that the doctors that worked on Drew, that told us he was going to die, that tried to get me to sign that document, also made some other calls that didn't pan out, made him a better doctor. Drew's first main doctor.
That's what she had said.
Made him, I know it.
Yes.
And that's incredible. And I love that you listen to your inner voice. Well, and a lot of people ignore that. Do. But that inner voice is where all your power is.
It is. So I really appreciate you letting us come here and film in this beautiful gallery. Emily's got some great shots of everything, and I mean, just looking like over your shoulder, it's very distracting because everything's there's so much to look at. It's so pretty. So just thank you so much. Anything else you want to talk about?
I'd just like to say to your listeners, if they want to learn more about the art business or my books, they can go to mariabrophy.com. And I also have a podcast where I talk about art. And I have a YouTube channel. And so you can just search my name, Maria Brophy, and you'll find everything.
And this is probably the most special moment of next, it's really important because I know what it's like to fight for your life and the fact that the love, no joke, this is, you saved his life. I know it. I know you did. And I'm sure he appreciates that. So,
he does.
Yeah.
And
your son must, have just, how overwhelming to think of now his father's in the hospital and his mother is out there fighting to save his life. And
our son was a trooper, though.
Yeah.
He was 19 at the time, and he was my rock. Him and my sister-in-law Andrea, both of them were just, and I had such a support system of girlfriends. I had a huge support system.
Yeah.
I'm very blessed. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, everybody. So go over to Maria's channel and check it out, and make sure you get her new book when it comes out in July.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, this is a painting that Drew did as a collaboration with another artist, and that artist's name is Phil Roberts. He painted this from a photograph of Drew's surfing pipeline, and then Drew painted the bottom and the top, and this was painted after Drew's near-death experience, and this is him showing it as best he can describe it. That's him in a coma. That's me and our son. These are all the people praying for him. And then when he left his body and he went up into the cosmos, and his near-death experience was that he was then taken into a river of light that was moving very fast. And there's a lot to the story, but I'll just give you the short version is he was told he had to come back, and he was told that there was no time to start over, and that he had to come back and help the others. And so for the last 3.5 years, he's been trying to figure out what that means.